Today is Friday, October the 19th, 2007, and my name is Karen Neurohr. I'm with the OSU Library. We're at the ConocoPhillips OSU Alumni Center today, and I have a couple of special people here that we're going to interview for O State Stories, an oral history project of the OSU Library. Thank you for coming today for the interview. I'd like to start by having you each introduce yourselves for us.
I'm Marcia Williams from McPherson, Kansas.
I'm Charles C. Williams from McPherson, Kansas.
Okay, and I might need you to speak up just a little bit so we can make sure we get our voices good
Let me do that
for
again.
the camera. Yes, if you would please.
I'm Charles C. Williams, McPherson, Kansas, graduate of 50 years ago.
50 years ago. This is your 50-year reunion year then.
It is.
Yes. Okay, well, I want to start our interview today by finding out a little bit about you and where you were born and raised. Marcia, we'll start with you.
I was born in Billings, Oklahoma. My father was a real mail carrier and my mother taught piano in her home. And I graduated from Billings High School, went to nurses training in Ponca City, and stayed there for 3 years until I started working. And then we got married, and then Charles wanted to go to OSU for the last 2 years of his college experience. And I worked for Dr. Fry in his office while Charles went to school.
Charles, where were you from originally?
I was born and raised in Osage County and graduated from Ponca City High School. And in 1949, and then I came here to college in the fall of 49. Went fall of 49 to spring of 50, or that year. Then the next year and a half I went to Northern Oklahoma Junior College. Then from there my Uncle Sam came along and spent 3 years in the 508 Airborne. Got out of the service in 1954 in January, and the second semester here had started, so I worked at Johnson Grain Terminal in Enid, Oklahoma. We were building the new elevator. And I fell and got hurt and broke an arm and so forth, but I was able to start the college the next fall here, and I found out while in the service what what college really meant. And I think I made the honor roll all of the last 3 years I was here. But I couldn't say that the first year I was here.
When you say you were building an elevator, are you talking about a big grain
Grain
elevator?
elevator, yes. I was on the maintenance crew, and this elevator fell from one floor to the next. Tore up a left arm.
So how did you two meet each other?
Well, he's from Ponca City,
Mm-hmm.
and he was home on leave, I think, from the service, and I was still in nurses training there, and so we met through mutual friends, blind date,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much it. Then we started corresponding because he still had some time in the service, and I still had another year of training. So.
Hey, Charles, let me find out a little bit about what it was like for you as a student here. You were married at the time, and you were working, Marcia.
Mm-hmm.
So were there a lot of married students going to school here when you were here?
Well, that's mostly who we knew
Mm-hmm.
were married students.
Where did you live?
We're on North Husband. Was it 412 or 214 or something? North
I think it was 207.
207 North Husband.
It was in a duplex.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, back then nobody had any money, and so we were all in the same boat. They'd either come to our house, we'd go to their house, and we played cards and did this and that. And we all realized why we were here.
I think they started growing up a little bit.
Oh. You didn't have any children yet at that time?
We had
No.
one child while we lived here.
Mm-hmm.
But studies come first, and we played afterwards.
And Marcia, were you working full-time?
Yes,
You were.
yes.
And Charles, you were just going to school full-time?
No, I worked for the park department,
Hmm.
and that was interesting. The superintendent of the city parks owned the duplex that we were in, so he found out that who I was and what we were doing, and he insisted that I come to work for them, and so that worked out real well. It's kind of amazing. It was very amazing when we first started the school here. I started and went to work for the college, sweeping some of the old Army buildings up here out every afternoon for 50 cents an hour. And, we thought that was a lot of money. Got along just fine. Then came back and went to school on the GI Bill after we got out of service. But they just quite well with Marcia working and me working and the GI Bill. I don't know, a lot of times we thought we had more money then than we do now.
And who was the park superintendent that you mentioned that owned?
Do you remember
The
his
duplex?
name? Gene.
His first name was Gene?
Gene, yeah.
Okay.
And it was kind of amusing, when we rented the apartment, they said no children. And when she got pregnant, why, we really sweated to have to go tell
I
him.
thought we were gonna have to leave
Oh.
the duplex, and move to another place, but this couple did not have any children of their own. And so they were very nice about it, and, helped us a lot with little Rosemary.
Did they live in the other part of the
They lived
duplex?
right behind us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they had their home right behind us,
Mhm.
and they were always very, very nice, and they did not make us move.
They were always wanting to take care of us.
Yes.
Oh.
And one of the interesting, we always remember that apartment was, one night during the summer, we had a tornado come through and the sirens went off. And we had to go about a block and a half down the street to a basement. We both ran out the back door, got about halfway down the street and realized we'd left Rosemary and her baby crib.
Was asleep.
So we had to turn around and go get her. By that time, the storm had passed over.
It's about over with. Oh dear.
So you must have had a car when you were here,
Yes.
and you were able to use the car to get to your job?
Well, actually, I didn't know how to drive.
Oh, you didn't?
I never did take driving, so when I was in high school, but I did learn to drive while we were living here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I could, because the doctor's office was clear on the other side of town, up where the hospital is now.
Mm-hmm.
So I had Wednesday afternoons off. That's how the doctor operated his practice. And so on Wednesday afternoon, I learned how to drive.
Oh.
So we finally, because Charles really didn't use the car.
Mm-hmm.
He walked to school.
Well, about 3 blocks over there, here,
Mhm.
so didn't really need it.
Mm-hmm.
When I first came down here to school, we lived in the Army barracks, the south end of town. And we were kind of looking at them down on the wall there, these old Army, these were Army
Was
barracks.
that part of Veterans Village, they called it?
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
And I was assigned to this one building along with 4 Koreans. You know, they were good people, fine guys. And
But you had just been in the war, in the Korean
this
War.
was the first time.
Oh,
Before-
okay. The
before
first
I
time.
went into
Before
service.
Okay.
Yep, they were over here.
Mhm.
And the only problem with those guys was they liked terrapins and they liked snakes. And, you know, we had to walk back and forth from down there up here to campus. Well, they'd bring those dumb terrapins in. You'd get up the next morning and put your shoes on. You had to empty the terrapins out, bugs and so forth. But outside of it, they were nice guys. I only stayed down there 1 semester. Then for next semester, 3 of my buddies just lived right around the corner here and had the upstairs of this 2-story house rented. So spent the rest of the time there.
You said that you wanted to come to school here at OSU after you were on the GI Bill, you know, when you came back. Why is it, did you have family members who had come here before you?
No.
No? So what was the connection there, or the draw for you to come here?
Well, I came back to become a veterinarian. And chemistry kept me out of vet school. And that was primarily the reason I came back to OSU.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it was in the home area here. I was the first one out of our family to go to college or graduate from college. The parents didn't, their parents didn't. I have 2 brothers and a sister that never graduated from college. But I have nephews and nieces that have, you know, come down here or gone elsewhere and graduated. But I was the first one in the clan to go to college.
Was your family supportive about your desire to go to college?
They didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was kind of mentality that, you know, you're growing up now, you can do whatever you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you can support it, you can afford it to do it.
So when you turned 18, were you pretty much expected to find your own way, go to school, or start working?
That's right.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
my family was maybe a little different, but yeah, I don't think they had that much family support.
Mm-hmm. So your family, did you always want to go into nursing?
Well, not always, but
Mm-hmm.
it finally came to me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But in those days, you know, women were pretty modest, and you know, even my grandparents thought that was a terrible thing for me to be taking care of men, you know. So, but they came around,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and they could see how much I enjoyed it.
What was the name of the program you were in at Ponca City?
Well, it was St. Joseph's School of Nursing, and I think it disbanded in about 77 or so. You know, and it was a 3-year diploma program under the Sisters of St. Joseph.
Oh, I hadn't heard about that before.
Uh-huh.
So had it been there a while when you
Oh,
started
yes,
school there?
I think it had.
Uh-huh.
I think it cost my father $175 to get me into school there.
Mm-hmm.
And then after you start progressing in your training, they give you $20 a month. So I don't think the nuns made anything really by the time that you finished school. You'd probably used all that money up.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of interesting. I always think about how much it costs, you know, to be educated anymore.
Charles, what degrees did you end up with then? What did you study?
I have a double major in animal husbandry and ag econ, like 9 hours, having a master's in ag econ.
Mm-hmm. What professors do you remember especially?
Tadashek, I was trying to remember my favorite one in ag econ last night. He was killed in a car wreck. I can't tell you what his name was, but he was up in Kansas on a summer tour or something and failed to stop at a railroad track and killed him. Another professor.
What do you remember about Professor Todashek? I've heard some other alumni talking about.
Oh,
About
Todd, you know, he'd feed you the line and this and that, but Todd said us, we're gonna do this. That's the way we did it.
Mm-hmm. What classes did he teach?
Oh, I had judging under him, and I think that's all classes I had under him was judging. But you know, Todd would say, "Now, boys, this is the way we're gonna do it." You know, you may not liked it, but that's the way he did it.
Mm-hmm.
And the boys respected him for that.
Mm-hmm. Were there very many women studying agriculture at that time?
Oh, we probably had 2 or 3 in our
Mhm.
class, but most of us all boys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and same way with Ag Econ, there had been a couple in those classes, but rest of it was all boys. But I understand it's changed considerably since then.
Yes, I think there are a lot more women that go into agriculture now than they used to. My husband had a similar experience. He went to Texas A&M and he wanted to go into vet school, and I think the chemistry class down there made it difficult for him, and he wasn't able to get into vet school there. So he went a different direction. But things do have a way of working out for you in the end, don't they?
Yeah.
Certainly. Okay.
You know, I'd go to summer school, take chemistry. Hell, I was just as proud of my C's as those guys that are taking it the second time was their A's, you know.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of those. You know, 90% of the class in the summer in chemistry was vet students taking it over to get into vet school.
Mm-hmm. There were probably those types of classes probably didn't have much of that in high school then to prepare you for that.
Like
none.
Like none.
Uh-huh.
I want to tell you about a botany class, the botany professor that we had here when it started back in when I first came here in '49. That was right after World War II, and a lot of veterans was here, and you know, knew most of those buddies. Well, in this botany class, when the bell rang, I was trying to think that old professor's name, but anyway, he locked the door into the classroom. That went on 3 or 4 times, or maybe longer, but one time he made a mistake. These veterans came in, didn't quite get there by the time the bell rang, and he locked the door, and they kicked the door down. Needless to say, he never locked that door again.
Mm-hmm. Well, when they kicked the door down, did they just come in and sit
They
down?
just come in, sat down,
Oh my.
class went on, you know.
Oh.
But, you know, that's why a lot of those old professors were. If you weren't there when the bell rang, time was over with.
So being a married couple, Charles was taking classes, you were working, didn't have a lot of extra money, probably. So what did you do for fun? Did you go to any dances or movies or anything?
Well, they used to have some very nice big band dances on campus in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And if we could afford it, and we did go to 2 or 3 of those, Tommy Dorsey and Vaughn Monroe and things like that.
So they came to Stillwater and performed?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
they did.
Oh, and where were those dances held at?
Well, I think the student union.
Mm-hmm. I bet that was fun.
It was. But otherwise, why, I think we would buy a watermelon and split it between 2 or 3 couples, and
Mm-hmm.
we played a lot of pitch, and I had a baby to take care of finally, and so we had plenty to do, and Charles was taking like 21 hours, and so he didn't have we didn't have television or anything like that. And we were kind of close to our families, and so on weekends we could drive home and see them, or they'd come to us, or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a telephone?
Yes.
You did. Did you talk to your families very often?
Oh, I think so.
You know, sometimes the students now, sometimes they'll call home every day and talk to their parents.
Well, it wasn't like that. No.
Uh-huh. Where did you shop for groceries?
Safeway.
I think so.
Uh-huh.
I think so in those days, yeah. And we thought Stillwater was a nice town, so we used to enjoy.
We used to
Around
do a
town.
lot of hunting and fishing, and
We did that.
Around Stillwater, you did? Where did you go for that?
north of town.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah, we've eaten a lot of duck, and we've eaten a lot of frogs, and we've eaten a lot of
Goose.
geese.
Oh.
You know,
Mhm.
a bunch of us old buddies. They all like to hunt,
Mm-hmm.
so we hunted, and we used to like to go frog hunting in the fall.
Well, Marcia, did
We
you cook?
hadn't been married too long, and we got a bunch of frogs and brought them home, and she said, "I'll cook them." Well, once we got them cleaned, and she put one bunch in the oven, and those frog legs began to move. Out the back door she went, and the cooking event was over.
Well, I had never seen them cook before. I had no experience.
You probably weren't very eager to eat it.
Oh, well, that's
were
pretty
you?
scary for me.
Oh. Okay. One of the things that I certainly want us to talk about a little bit has to do with the current mascot that we have here at Oklahoma State University is Pistol Pete, and he was modeled after Frank Eaton, who was a real person. And Marcia, if you will start and tell me about your family and the connection with Frank Eaton.
Well, my grandfather was Ed Stinnett from Enid, and he and Frank Eaton were old friends, and I can't tell you exactly. I think they were probably in the Cherokee Strip Association together, and they used to ride horses at the beginning of the parade on the 16th of September every year, you know, to celebrate the opening of the Cherokee Strip.
Mm-hmm.
And he was an old friend, and he would be at my grandparents' every once in a while. And he lived at Perkins, which is close to Stillwater, so after we were married, why, we would see him on occasion and maybe help him with rides, because as far as I know, he didn't drive, and he was quite elderly by that time. And so we would see him on occasion, and he was always a great storyteller. You know, he would tell us things about his childhood, and he always dressed like that. You know, he had the long braids and the big hat, always wore his guns. And I guess one experience maybe that you want me to talk about is when I took care of him in the hospital. Before I started working for Dr. Fry, I worked at the hospital for a while, and he would come in as a patient, and you know, most of the time we could hardly get his hat away from him, much less his guns, you know, because he was just a staid old cowboy. So usually we had to get special permission, and he'd keep his gun under his pillow while he was a patient there. So that's something that you can't forget.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So he was a great old cowboy that we kind of grew up with.
So you knew him as a child when you were a child.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. What else do you remember about him?
I guess just being the character that he was, you know, and even in those days you didn't see people dressing like that very often.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that he was an interesting storyteller, And I didn't think too much about him actually, but he was just an old friend of my grandparents. I have a great picture at home with them leading that parade.
Oh.
And we had the picture blown up. It was a rather small photo, and I had the picture blown up to an 8x10, and then I realized that both of them had their guns pointed, you know, and it's really a cute picture.
Mm-hmm.
So I really treasure that.
Oh, yes, I bet you do. Did he like children? How was he around children?
Well, yes, I do. He had children of his own.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I met his son one time that I happened to get to meet him over in a restaurant in Enid. And, well, yeah, sure, he's very friendly, very nice to children.
Mm-hmm.
Always accepted us, you know, as part of his extended family in a way. And he liked Charles too.
Mm-hmm. Charles, can you tell me what you remember about?
Well, I had, seen Frank or Pistol Pete for 3, 4, 5 years prior to coming to school down here, and it seemed like annually the college would invite him on campus to speak to the English class. Well, it happened to be the English class I was in that day, and he came in and he always pulled his old pistol. Well, that day he forgot to take the bullets out of it. There's a hole shot in the ceiling in Old Central over there after that. So from then on, college kind of made him check that pistol in when he talked to the classes. But that was quite the experience that day. It didn't seem to bother him a whole lot, just like an everyday event, but it was quite interesting. And visiting with old Pistol Pete, why, you only had to say hello, Pete, and conversation was on, and he'd do the rest of the talking. He always liked to tell me about the old boy that came through Perkins and shot his dad. And rode on to somewhere in New Mexico. You know, Pistol Pete told me to always say, well, I got on old bow legs and followed him out there and found him, shot him, got back on bow legs, come back to Perkins. If I've heard that story once, I've heard it 25 times about it. He went out and killed the old boy, got on his horse, came back.
Seems like he spent about half of his life avenging his father's death. You know, he was determined to get the men that had done it, because I guess they just shot him in the doorway, didn't they?
Yeah, they're right in. They used to have a blacksmith shop in Perkins.
And that was his father's shop?
Yep, shot Dad right in the doorway. And our recollection is that was probably one of 5 that he killed. But back in those days, if you were defending yourself, well, that was all right. Lawman that was the thing to do, so he was never involved in any trials or arrests. Well, I'm sure he was arrested a time or 2 for overindulging, but that's part of life too.
They say you have defining moments in your life, so
Yes.
the death of his father would certainly be
because
classified as a defining moment.
That's what he wanted to talk about, and that's what he spent his life doing, I think.
So you said that you gave him transportation periodically when you were going to school here?
When we go from here to Stillwater, or from here to Enid, or we get a hold of him, and boy, he was ready.
You'd go pick him up at Perkins?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or if we'd be in Perkins and he'd happen to be up there for something and he needed a way home, why?
He knew
Charlie, now wait a minute.
he knew we were here, you know, so he would count on that. He had a chance to go visit with my grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking when he got to the car, and he was talking when he left the car. So he didn't go to sleep. He kept him well.
What were some of his other favorite stories that he told?
well, just rustling cattle they were always after somebody. Somebody that had broken the law or their law. And he was always telling those kind of stories, how they used to go after old Bill or old Frank or whatever his name was,
Mm-hmm.
He had all these other buddies, I can't remember their names, but he would, he'd name them all off. Well, we spent 9 days or 12 days chasing old so-and-so. Well, what did you after him for, Frank? He'd tell you what he'd done that they thought that he needed to correct it on. So.
Did he wear a badge? Did you ever see him wearing a badge?
I think
I
don't believe he did.
Mm-hmm.
But that by the time that we really were around him very much, he was probably past that.
Mm-hmm.
And he probably wouldn't be allowed to wear the badge.
But he still
then.
had his gun with him.
Oh yeah,
And,
he wore his holster.
You kind of wondered whether the poor old boy just owned that one change of clothes or not, because every time you seen him, that's what he had on.
Oh, he had on the same clothes.
Oh yeah.
What color was his hat?
No, it was tan, wasn't it?
Yeah, an old tan hat. Once in a while he'd come in with an old black hat. I guess he found they put on whichever one was closest to the door when he come
Was
out.
Was he married? Did he live with family this time period, or was he?
Well,
alone at that time?
he had to, but I'm not sure if his wife was deceased at that time or not.
Mm-hmm.
He always seemed to be alone,
Mm-hmm.
so she could very well have not been alive at that time, when he was an older man.
Right.
But I never did meet her.
Mm-hmm.
I never did know her.
Lee Allred, who they lived just southeast of town here, who was in our class, who is deceased now, but I can remember when we were down here and we'd be talking about old Pistol Pete. He could remember Pistol Pete from being just a kid, so that 15, 20 years prior to the time we were here.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea how long they lived in Perkins or where they came from or anything. I'm sure he's told me, but that's kind of slipped by.
Did he have any unusual mannerisms or way of speaking at all?
Just old-fashioned cowboy, just probably had no formal schooling at all, so he probably didn't have very good grammar,
Mm-hmm.
but just little things like that, just old-fashioned good guy.
Mm-hmm. Loved horses.
Oh,
Very much.
yeah.
Did he talk
Oh,
about
yeah.
horses a lot?
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how many he had or how many he'd owned, but it's quite a bunch.
And so he punched cattle too. Did he worked cattle some?
Oh yeah.
I'm
as
sure.
well.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I think that was.
They had to back in those early days, to survive. So, punch cattle, and wasn't he a deputy sheriff a time or two
Well, that's
through the years? But
probably the reason
Probably
he was
wasn't.
chasing criminals. Sure.
What was your grandfather like? Was he similar? Was he a cowboy? And
Well, yes, he was, but he did other things too. I think he was a cattle inspector at one time, but those were early days. And then later on, he worked for the Wichita Eagle. He helped take papers all over the county area, around Eaton. That's where he lived. So, yeah, and I think my grandmother was worked at the courthouse. She registered deeds. I think that's what she did. So, my grandfather ran for sheriff a couple of times, but I don't think he ever made it, but he did run. So, yeah,
where were they? Around Chandler? Is that where they came from?
yeah, they did live in Chandler. He was also a butcher, because I remember him bringing meat into my mother's house, he'd bring meat in. And there was a sale of a butcher shop in Billings where I was raised, and I think that's how they got to Billings. And so they lived there. I have some great old pictures of them in that shop.
And you
So
knew
that's-
the Bellman family
Well,
in
yes.
Billings? Mhm.
My dad was a real mail carrier, and so, when I'd go on the route with him, we'd always pass their farm, and we knew him, sure.
Mhm.
Not real well, but as I said, my mother used to teach the girls piano. So.
Okay, I'm going to switch back to Frank Eaton here. Do you know if he could read? Or do you know if he could read?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Really don't know for sure if he
Yeah.
did, but I would just guess that, because even my granddad, I don't think he had more than about 5th grade education.
That was common back then.
Sure,
Mhm.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so if Frank had that much, if he went to school, he would have
Mhm.
known how to read.
Okay. Well, it's great to get some stories from people who knew Frank Eaton, because I've met one other person who graduated from school here. He was Henry Bedford, who's a rancher in Montana, and he remembers Frank Eaton coming to class as well and talking to students. And so that must have been a fairly common occurrence during that period. And that tells me that the professors sort of appreciated his background and his history. What did he talk about when he came to classes? Just his experiences?
His experiences as well.
Uh-huh. And were the students just spellbound to
Oh
listen
yeah,
to him?
oh yeah, so many of the students wasn't from around here, and I can't remember whether it was English or Oklahoma history, but they both fit in,
Mm-hmm.
and it was quite interesting, quite an experience for those students who hadn't been involved in any of that before, was just to hear him.
Or just to see him,
Mm-hmm.
because he was quite something to look at.
Do you think he was proud to be selected as the model for the mascot?
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. I'm sure he was.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember anything in particular about that at all?
Did he ever say anything as far as his lectures were concerned about that? I don't remember hearing him talk about that, but I can just very well imagine. He probably took it all with a grain of salt, but then I'm sure he was.
Mm-hmm.
Oh hell, Sonny, look what they've done now.
That's something he would have said. Oh.
Look what they've done now.
Well, there was a picture in the paper today of him in a classroom, and some
Right.
students were around him in the Ocali, and it makes me think that he must have enjoyed being around the college students.
Oh, I'm sure he did.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an article about him. There's a big
Oh, my
page of that
goodness.
picture, but then right here, see, there's a picture of him in class.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that great? And those students look like they're just intrigued. Look, he's showing them his gun. Oh, yeah, that's great.
Uh-huh. You all have to. Did any of your kids come to school here?
No,
No.
No, because,
not because we didn't try it.
Oh.
well, we lived in Kansas then,
Mm-hmm.
so they went to several different schools in Kansas. But
Grandchildren?
But we were really glad when our granddaughter came to school here. She graduated last
That I
year.
had gone to school here, they waived part of her out-of-state tuition.
Oh, good. Does she know your stories about Frank Eaton?
Well, I don't know if we've talked too much about that. We have some,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe not to too much of
Mhm.
an extent. But
I think she would find that very
oh,
interesting.
sure.
Yeah, to know that you knew him like you did.
Oh, well, I think she knows
yeah.
that.
Oh, uh-huh.
But she probably doesn't know too many details about it. But,
Uh-huh.
you know, as the generations go, they kind of take a lot of that for granted. You know, they don't think too much about it.
You said you would take him home or pick him up in Perkins. What was his house like?
Little shack.
It was an old shack.
Kind of back behind the blacksmith shop.
Oh, it was still, the blacksmith shop was still there at the time? Was that in downtown Perkins then?
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The old blacksmith shop wasn't in operation, but you know what it was.
Huh. I wonder if it's still there or if it's closed somehow.
We haven't been back to Perkins for years.
Have you ever talked to anyone else about him? Has anyone ever asked you questions about him before
Not,
or anything?
not very much, you know.
I know, well, some people have done or tried to do some research about him before, and I just wondered if they ever made the connection or knew about you all and your connection with him.
Well, and we don't know too much.
But knowing him as a child, though, I think, and that your grandfather being friends with him
Uh-huh.
is probably pretty unique, and that you knew him across a long period of time
Mhm.
like that.
Mhm.
I think that's pretty special. So.
Well, I guess we didn't realize how special it was
Oh,
till we grew up some more.
That's okay.
But that's true.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and just trying to get your reminiscences about, you know, just different things about him that, you know, people who don't know him can really visualize him and just sort of get a good idea about his personality and things like
Yeah,
that.
I don't think that we really appreciated what he was and who he was
Mm-hmm.
until we actually came to Stillwater.
Oh.
And then we realized then, I think, that how special he was to people and how unique he was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, then we started realizing, I think,
Mm-hmm.
what a
Look at
special
one.
guy he was.
Like that one picture there, it showed him with all the students around him. Looks like he's really concentrating. That was what he liked, to really get up there and explain these things to you or whoever was around him.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd spend all afternoon telling you that it's 2:00, things like that.
Oh.
He didn't say, well, it's 2:00, let's go, you know. He'd say, well, let's do this. He'd go talk a half a day on one of those, whatever you wanted to know or whatever you was interested in. He'd always find the time.
Huh.
He was very good in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Did they just ask him over once a year?
I think he used to be in the parade here too.
Oh, yes, oh, yes.
Oh,
Oh,
probably.
yeah, he probably
Mhm.
led the parade.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember anything about homecoming? This is homecoming weekend, so what was homecoming like when you were living in Stillwater?
The orange door, you remember the orange door?
All the sorority fraternities were all, you know, decorated, so not as elaborate as they are today, but we had the parade and
Where was the orange door? I haven't heard about that before.
Well, wasn't there a song by that name?
Oh, I don't know.
I think there was,
Oh.
and that was kind of part of the parade for a while.
Oh.
It was a song.
It was a song?
Uh-huh.
Huh.
So I kind of associate that with the parade, you know, in
Uh-huh.
those days.
Huh.
It was always nice, and there was the celebrations on campus were really special, and it was so pretty around here. Even then, you know, it was so pretty. My one special remembrance was how pretty the magnolia trees were, because I don't think I'd ever seen them before, and how very pretty they were in bloom. And then Theta Pond was always so attractive to me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we enjoyed our time here.
It's nice the campus has retained the beauty,
Mm-hmm.
I think.
yes.
bet it has.
Those trees are still here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, after you graduated with your degrees, your double major, which that had to be difficult to do, taking extra classes like that, what career did you end up with? Or did you have several different career paths?
Well, when I graduated, here my first job was I managed Gooch Research Farm at Manhattan. I went into primarily the farm management and real appraisals.
Mm-hmm.
After I left there, I went to Texas and managed part of a large turkey broiler laying feeder pigs cattle operation for this large company in Texas, Tyler, Texas. I was in charge of their beef cattle, their swine, and their turkeys. And 50,000 turkeys a day. I went to work there. The boss called me in and said, "Charlie, these are, you're too hard."
Mm.
They were with me constantly. Then after we left there, I went to work for a Prudential insurance company in the mortgage loan department. And that's where I became an appraiser. Our first assignment was Fort Smith, Arkansas. We were there about 3 years, and they transferred me to Hutchinson, Kansas, then to Emporia. Then in 1970, they decided to get out of the mortgage loan business or the finance business, so they terminated about 300 of us over the United States. And at that time, I went to work for McPherson Bank and Trust, headed their farm management department, and was with them for almost 20 years. Then I went to work for Farm Credit as an appraiser and stayed with them until I retired, which was about 10 years ago. And after I retired from them, I started my own appraisal business and farm management business, and that's what I'm still doing. Stay quite busy.
You've continued to use your training that you received here, then, it sounds
Yeah.
like, in all the different jobs that you did.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that the university or the college prepared you well for your different positions?
Yes, no. You got out of it what you put in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I always wish that I had gone and taken more appraisal courses when I was here, but they were just barely getting started, and felt like the professors who would teach them didn't know a hell of a lot more than I knew, so we thought we ought to spend more time doing some other class, so that's the reason I didn't take any appraisal courses here. One thing I always missed and I always have regretted that I didn't learn to fly while I was here.
Oh.
We could have done that under the GI Bill, and but I couldn't get it worked in.
Sounds like you had a demanding schedule, as many hours as you were taking already.
You did.
Mm-hmm. Did you?
I told myself I was going to get out of there in 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
What we did.
Mm-hmm. Did you continue in the nursing profession, Marcia?
Well, yes. I've worked off and on for 50 years too, but I had 5 children, so I did take some years off because of that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I have worked in the nursing field.
Mm-hmm.
Different things, office, hospital, taking care of disabled, a lot of different areas. Loved it all.
Mm-hmm.
When she decided to quit, she just sent her license in and said, "This is over with," so nobody else would call her and ask her to come and work because she wouldn't know. Wasn't legal then anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Well, nurses are so much in demand anymore that if you don't, the only way I knew to completely leave that field was to let my license go. So, so that's how I did. But I worked until I was 70.
How many times have you come back for homecoming over the years?
It's probably the second.
5. Well, we've been here a few times when the children were little.
Okay.
You brought your children
Mm-hmm.
down to Stillwater? I bet that was fun. To take them and show them the house you used to live in, and
Yes, we've driven by there and showed them through the student union. And, yeah, they love that.
Now, was the library? The library was fairly new when you were going to school here, wasn't it? What do you remember about the library?
I spent a lot of time there.
Did you?
We walked through that this afternoon just
Oh, good.
to see what it looked like.
How has it changed?
You'd have to answer that.
It doesn't appear like there's as many books on the second floor as there used to be.
We have a lot of offices on the second floor
That's what
now.
it looked like. You know, we used to spend a lot of time down that southwest corner of that library where there'd be 3 or 4 of us in there. Always remember, I had nobody from Ponca City that'd come down and see us once in a while. There was 3 or 4 of us in there. We was working on an econ, some kind of an econ problem, determining the economic life of a bull. And this old buddy from Ponca City, just till I think the day he died, was wondering how we could figure the economic life of a bull, but that was a problem that was assigned to us. That's what we worked on.
Oh my!
I thought about that when we walked in over there. I said, "Well, wonderful old John is." We walked in here thinking he'd been dead 10 years, you know.
Oh, that's a good story. Well, someone said earlier that they remember the library was there weren't many buildings on campus that were air conditioned, but the library was.
That's right.
And so students, the few buildings that were popular places for students to go.
Of course.
During that time. Do you have anything else you want to talk about for the interview today?
I don't, do you?
I'm going to try to find out if the doctor I worked for is still alive. I don't know if he might be or not. I haven't heard from him for years.
Oh. Will you look in a phone book maybe?
Well, that's the only way I know. Yeah. And of course the hospital over there is so big and different than it used to be. Because where I worked was the old hospital.
Oh.
And of course all that, I don't think there's any of that even left. So all that has changed a great deal.
But it was basically in the same location.
Yes.
On 6th
It was,
Avenue.
right. So it's just grown.
Yes, it has. It certainly has. Do you have any advice for students today that you would share with students?
They get out of it, what to put in it.
Work hard and enjoy.
If you come to play, that's what you're gonna get.
Mm-hmm.
If you come to get an education, you gotta work just love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It must be hard though at 18 to really settle down and work that hard, you know, because most of them are not too mature or really know what they want at that age.
No, they've changed their majors a few times, but that's part of the process
That's
for
right.
that
Yes,
age.
yes.
Trying to figure out.
Part of the growing up process.
Yes.
But you know what, today, you can almost go 3 years without declaring a major.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, why you declared it right today, you come on, you know.
Mm-hmm. I guess that's to give them a little time to figure things out.
Yeah.
take some of the basic English and history classes
Mhm.
and try to figure out what direction they want to go in.
But you know, a lot of students, a lot of parents today are sending their kids to JUCOs or even taking a lot of it on the computer of the English and the basic courses that you require before they get that. Particularly in Kansas where the expense has gone up there. You know, they could go 2 years of junior college for what 1 year cost them at the state colleges.
But I'm sure that OSU probably has plenty of satellite schools too. You know, they're bound to have.
There's actually a partnership with Northern Oklahoma College. You talked about Northern Oklahoma College. There's a partnership with them, and they have a branch campus here in Stillwater. And so some students will start out taking classes there,
Yeah.
and then start
Transfer.
taking classes here. It's in fact it's right across. It's on Hall of Fame. Just it's right here, close to our campus, and those students can use the library, and you know, it's another way for them to get started with their education.
Well, that's what I mean. I think the big schools are trying to make it easier for kids, you know, to save some of their expenses and to still get their education.
Yeah.
Maybe a little closer to their homes,
Mm-hmm.
so they won't have to have that immediate expense maybe for a while.
Our tape is it's blinking, so I know it's about to
It's
run
over
out.
with.
So it's been a great interview. Thank you so much for participating in this project. We really do appreciate it.
Well, I feel kind of honored to be asked.
Oh, well, I know you'll have a wonderful reunion in a little while.
Yeah.
At the foundation, so we
Are we
appreciate
gonna
this.
see you tomorrow?